Hi, and welcome. My name is Miriam Naiman, a senior advisor in the Answers and Advocacy Department at Nefesh B'Nefesh.
And my name is Sarah Nearer. I am a team manager in the Aliyah Guidance Division here at Nefesh B'Nefesh.
We look forward to presenting to you today on what it takes and what to think about in choosing your community in Israel. We look forward to spending the next 45 minutes or so with you, giving you what to think about, points to ponder as you begin your Aliyah planning.
So let's talk about choosing the community. What does it mean to choose your community? What are the things that you should be thinking about and looking for when you make that choice? Different points are important for different people, and we want to bring up a lot of different ideas so that you can think about different things that are important to you. These are issues that we want you to think about now as you look for the right community for your family. Let's start with budgeting. We at Nefesh B'Nefesh have developed, along with some of our partners, an Aliyah budget calculator. It is an amazing and useful tool that I urge all of you to use and play around with. The link to it is shown on the screen below. You can put in all the information that is relevant to you. You can change the numbers, and you can come up with a budget that matches the needs of your family specifically. For Aliyah, budgeting is basically the concept that your assets, your income, minus the expenses that you have equals the viability of your Aliyah. So we want to encourage you and urge you to be aware of the costs of making Aliyah, be aware of your own budget, and use this amazing tool to help you understand your monthly costs. By the way, in Israel, costs are thought about as a monthly budget and not an annual budget. This may be very different from what you are used to outside of Israel, but this is something to start thinking about as you move to Israel, to think about your budget in a monthly way and not an annual way. Some of the things to think about for budgeting in your community is whether you're going to live in the center of the country or in the periphery, meaning in the north or the south. Costs of apartments and real estate in those two parts of the country are very different and can affect your budget considerably. One of the main issues in discussing your budget is whether you are planning on renting your residence or purchasing it. Those of you who have already purchased an apartment may know already the costs involved in keeping that apartment, your mortgage costs, your vad bayit, the condo fees, your utilities, and your arnona, the municipal property tax that is your responsibility to pay. Those of you who are renting should understand that those are also your required expenses, including the municipal property tax. In Israel, the renter is generally held responsible to pay that tax, not the owner of the apartment. You may want to take a pilot trip. What we mean by a pilot trip is a short 10-day, 2-week visit to Israel to look around and look at properties and look at communities to see what's available as far as apartments and homes, and also to determine what your costs would be. Do the research to understand what your costs would be so that that Aliyah budget calculator, which I spoke about earlier, will be the most useful to you.
What Sarah said is really very important because, in particular, if you're going to be coming on that pilot trip and looking at communities and considering where you may want to purchase or where you want to rent, those hidden costs are not always the costs that are shared with you by the real estate agents, or even if you're going from a seller who's selling their property on their own without a realtor. Really try to ask as many proactive questions as you can when you are looking into wherever it is that you want to consider living. Finances are really, of course, the foundation of your Aliyah planning. And today, really, we're going to try only to focus on community. But I had to add that because many people will put all of their finances into their chosen community and go what I call being house poor. And while living in any one particular town might suit all of your needs, you also really want to have the money for that iced coffee, for going to the theater, for doing whatever it is that you wish to do in your community of choice. There are those of you who may want to consider what's called in Israel a senior residence. Now, abroad, you may have a gated community or something very specific that people live not only in a room in a building, but really in their own structure, in their own home. Here in Israel, what is called senior living is very much equated with assisted living. Assisted living doesn't mean that you need assistance, but it's there if you need. Perhaps a button on the wall to call for assistance. Nursing care available within the residential setting. By nursing care, I mean a nurse. I don't mean caregiving, but rather you have a medical need and there is somebody on site who can assist you with that. This type of residential setting might be the right choice for you, in particular, if you have a bit of a harder time socializing. Here you have built-in social ability. If you don't want to really be bothered with paying those utilities and everything, because here everything is all included. With many of these residential settings, giving you the opportunity to join for meals once a day, twice a day, 3 times a day, or not, you can cook in your own kitchen, in your own apartment. I do always think that it is something to add when talking to someone, I don't know, our age, above the age of 60, who may be considering this very big move. Aliyah is very exciting, and immigration is a little bit harder. And so we begin with all of these comments about choosing your community because making friends should not be hard. Making friends should be something that can come to you with ease. Some of you may be asking, well, I'm this age, and what discounts might I have available to me? There are no senior discounts when it comes to purchasing or when it comes to renting. Everyone will be entitled, depending on their community, to a discount in their arnona, a discount in that municipal tax that Sarah mentioned. The amount of discount is based on the community where you live. It is not a set amount. So that's another proactive question for you to ask when you are exploring your community of choice. Beyond the Aliyah discount, after that year of using that discount, there are other discounts available, such as a senior discount, but not all of you will be eligible for that senior discount. It will be based on your worldwide passive income. When you arrive and when that becomes a little bit more realistic for you to know that information, we're so happy to share it in the post-Aliyah department. Again, Sarah mentioned about purchase, and purchasing is great. You open the door and you're home. Some of you may have purchased 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Some of you may begin to look into purchase even before you arrive because you visited that community so many times. What a rental offers you is to explore that community of choice. Perhaps after a few months, you'll realize, it's the right city for me, but I don't live on the right side of town. Or, you know what? I thought that I had to move to this particular city because of whatever personal reasons you have. But really, I'd like to explore the north. I'd like to explore the south. Finding a long-term rental in Israel can be a little bit challenging. By long-term, I don't mean 1 year. By long-term, I mean those of you who may be looking for a 5-year, a 10-year commitment, and that might not always be possible. Again, this is a proactive question for you to ask when meeting with a realtor or however it is that you are going to go about finding that rental. Is this going to be for a year, for 2 years? What are my options in signing this lease? And of course, making sure that you have that lease reviewed by a lawyer, another financial consideration.
Let's talk about how we create a community. Many of you have probably heard the term soft landing. What do we mean by soft landing? It can mean different things to different people. Essentially, what we're urging you to try to do is for the first few months or year or however long, find a place that you feel comfortable where your integration will go as smoothly as possible. Let's say your best friend lives in Ranana and you want to be near him or her, that is what's crucial to you, to get that kind of support from someone who's lived here already and can help you through the initial challenges of moving to a new country. That could be a soft landing for you. Another family might say, I want to be near my children or my grandchildren or my great niece or my brother. Those are things that are important to each family individually, and we urge you to consider how important that is to you in the scheme of things when you make your choice of where you are going initially. Does the community offer maximum support for Olim? Many communities have an English-speaking municipal coordinator who can help you with integrating into that community. Not only the bigger cities with large English-speaking Olim have such a person on staff. You'd be surprised that some of the smaller places like Ramat Gan, which is not a small city but does not have a large number of English speakers, does provide an English-speaking OLEC coordinator in that city. Rehovot, where I live, for example, has a lot of English speakers, but does not have an English-speaking coordinator. When I first arrived there 12 and a half years ago, I learned that the hard way when I tried to go to the city hall and ask for such a person. They said, well, we have for Russian speakers, but we don't have anything for English speakers. It didn't matter, as it turned out, because the community of English speakers was very helpful and very supportive. So the municipal coordinator may not be the end-all and be-all of your calculation as to whether to land in that city or not. The soft landing may refer to a place that you know and love. Netanya is very well loved by many, many new Olim in the older age category, but even for the younger people too. There's now a very nice, vibrant English-speaking young community in Netanya as well, because of its proximity to the coast and to the sea. So that might be important to you. You've lived all your life inland and now you want to be near the sea. That could be the soft landing for you, because walking on the beach every day is what gives you strength. Also remember that your soft landing can be a short-term choice. It does not have to be your permanent choice. This is where you want to be initially, and you will look around and do those internal pilot trips, which are mini trips to investigate other places once you are here. Ulpan. Those of you who do not know Hebrew yet or want to improve your Hebrew, there is an Ulpan benefit that is given to you by the Ministry of Aliyah and Integration, Misad Klita, for up to 10 years following your Aliyah. Some cities have that municipal Ulpan option within the borders of the city, and some cities require you to go to a nearby city to attend Ulpan. The Ulpan option generally is 5 days a week for 5 hours a day, 8 a.m. to 1 p.m., for 5 months. Some cities offer an option for a 3-day-a-week Ulpan, same number of hours, and for people who are older and feel they can't sit in a classroom for that many days in a row. That's something to look into if that's important to you. If you would prefer to be going to class only 3 days a week, it'll be for longer. It'll be for 10 months' time, I believe, instead of 5. Is that right, Myra?
Yes,
Thank you. Correct. Okay. And so that's something to look into. And if it's important for you to stay within the boundaries of the city that you're in, that is another question to ask when you're looking around for where you want to go. Please remember that there are many organizations that are English-speaking that will help Olim. There's like the Association of Americans and Canadians in Israel, the AACI, Ezra, which is English-Speaking Residents Association. There's Amit, there's Hadassah, there's WIZO, there's a British group called HOB, and They offer volunteer opportunities. They are not equally present in all communities. So if you are interested in participating in their activities, you should look into where they are active. In Israel, unlike in many other countries in the world, the synagogue is not necessarily the center of communal life. This is why these organizations are important to know about and utilize their activities so that you can meet other people and have activities to attend. It may not work for you to expect the synagogue to provide that kind of social life and communal life. One other important topic to think about is whether the community you're moving to is primarily young families or has people who are already retired or about to retire. Again, for social reasons, you want to have people that are available during the week and not just on Shabbat.
There are those of you who may say, I don't need a soft landing. I've been to Israel over the past 40 years multiple times. I got this. I know the country. And you do as a tourist. What is it like to live in that community? And so while a soft landing might sound like something that you may not need, you still may want to consider all of the points that Sarah mentioned, because being able to come into a place where you know that you will have an easier time to say, hi, be my friend, I'm a wonderful person, and this is what I love doing. Will you find those options in your community of choice? Sarah also mentioned about Ulpan. Some of you may decide to come at any point of time during the course of the year and assume that going to Ulpan will be one of your first steps into integration. And so, prior to your arrival, you will want to find out either from Nefesh B'Nefesh or from the municipal coordinator that Sarah mentioned, when does the Ulpan or the Ulpanin in your chosen community begin? Because in many cities, there are set semesters, a fall semester that may start more in August, and then a spring semester, which starts in and around February. There are those cities that have multiple Ulpanim that open at multiple times. Again, you want to be proactive so that you can feel secure in your Aliyah planning, and that the pitfalls that you may experience upon arrival are simply just that. They're just pitfalls. They're not something that's going to make you feel stuck, because you have done the research and the networking that you have wanted to do prior to your arrival. And speaking of networking, today, networking is easier than ever. There are those of you who may or may not be comfortable with Facebook, and most communities have an English-speaking Facebook group. There are those of you who may or may not be comfortable with WhatsApp groups. I was recently abroad and I learned that WhatsApp is not as popular as it is here in Israel. But did you know that most communities in Israel have a WhatsApp group for that community? And if we're talking about a city like Jerusalem, which is a very big city, you then have WhatsApp groups for the different communities in Jerusalem. How can you find out about those WhatsApp groups? Because really, that is the best way to network. Somebody in your neighborhood, somebody within your age group, whether you want to know about the general community, you want to know about healthcare, you want to know whatever it is to live in that community and what that's like for another individual. Join one of those WhatsApp groups. You don't have to be living here to do so. You don't even have to be living in that community to do so. You can open it, be part of it, and then close it once you feel that it isn't relevant for you. And of course, I'll just reiterate what Sarah said about the importance of cultural activities or volunteering or whatever it is that you want to do to live in Israel. The Aliyah planning piece prior to your Aliyah takes up a lot of time. There's a lot of paperwork and certifications and everything that you know or will know that you need in order to get on that plane. That's something that Sarah deals with on a daily basis. But what are you going to do once you're here? How will you be keeping busy? Yes, you're going to go to Ulpan, but where else are you going to have that opportunity to say, hi, be my friend, I'm a wonderful person? These are things that we have already spoken about. So when we talked about that soft landing, as Sarah spoke about choosing a community in proximity of people who you may already know in Israel, Can you afford that community? And if you can afford that community today, is there the possibility for you to purchase in that community? Medical services, of course, are very, very important to everyone. We always talk about health and wealth being sort of the foundations for people's considerations for moving to Israel and how they will then be able to feel comfortable in their community of choice. Not every city is going to have a hospital. Where I live, there are no hospitals, even though there are over 200,000 residents in the city where I live. However, by ambulance, it's about 17 minutes to the closest hospital. By car, a little bit longer. Nobody should ever have to get to any hospital by ambulance. We should always be blessed with the best of good health.
Amen.
There are 4 healthcare providers in the country, most of which are found in every community in the country. However, you will find that some are more popular in some communities over others. I'm going to go back to the WhatsApp groups. I'm going to go back to the importance of networking to be able to say to somebody, hi, I'm interested in moving to Beersheba. I'm 65 years old. One of the popular Kupot Cholim, the medical providers for people of my age group. Who speaks English? Where am I going to find the needs that I have being met in my community of choice? There is another webinar on healthcare where many of these questions will be answered for you. But the point is here is to bring to the forefront of your planning, what do I need today? What do I want to prepare for tomorrow in terms of medical services? What about diversity? Diversity of age, diversity of religion. As Sarah mentioned, the shul, the synagogue, is not a focal point for social availability in Israel. It is really, honestly, for by and large, where people will go to pray on those designated times and days that they choose to do so. So where else will I find, if I'm religious, those religious needs filled? To the community of choice that I am thinking of going to, does it have a shi'ul? Does it have classes in English or only in Hebrew? Are they mixed or are they separate for men and women? Or am I looking for cultural and religious diversity? I'm very comfortable with people driving on Shabbat. I'm very comfortable with roads being closed on Shabbat. I'm very comfortable with having people who are significantly younger than I, or am I very comfortable with having people who are a little bit more in my age group in the area of the community that I have chosen? Again, these are just points for you to think about as you begin to move ahead and looking at different communities in Israel. I'd just like to add that some people who have a lot of Israel experience say, you know what? Israel's a small country, but has a Jewish community everywhere. And we're just not sure where we want to go. We know that we want to make Aliyah. We're going to go first to an Airbnb. And sometimes, that's a good idea because you come into a place, the beds are made for you, there's a hot shower, there's linen, what you need, and you can sort of just unwind from the trip and feel like you can get your wits about you. But is that going to be a springboard towards looking at communities, towards looking at apartments? It may be. But if you come at the height of the summer, where it may be harder to find that apartment, then that might be a little bit more challenging than you anticipated.
Miriam, I just wanted to add, I know you talked about WhatsApp groups. Facebook is also a very popular tool in Israel to access information. There are many community-based Facebook groups. I would urge people, even if you don't already have a Facebook profile, to open a Facebook account simply for doing research on Aliyah in many different areas, but community is also one of them.
Again, what are you looking for in a community? Some people say, but how am I going to find a community? And I very often will reframe that back to the individual and say, but what are you looking for? Because sometimes you need to put on paper what your personal criteria are. And if you're married and you and your spouse do that exercise together, you actually may find that your criteria don't always overlap. I would like to invite everyone to purchase for themselves what I call an Aliyah notebook. Now, somebody once asked me, so where can I go buy this Aliyah notebook? And I said, well, really, it's just your personal spiral or whatever kind of notebook you have that helps keep you focused and organized in your Aliyah planning. You may want to have categories such as communities, such as healthcare, such as finances, and such as what will I do once I get here? How will I be spending my time? I shared earlier that Sarah and I are also mature adults, as we call ourselves, the over 60 range. And we know that really 60 is the new 40, 40 is the new 60, however you say that, Sarah. But nobody's coming to make Aliyah and sit and in a rocker and knit. Although some of you may be considering bringing an older parent, an older family member, and these are very important considerations for you to have for them as well. While you may feel that you'd like to move to Israel and volunteer and be out there and do all those things, don't forget about that family member that is important for you to bring with you, and what are their needs and how will their medical needs and, if relevant, social needs be met for themselves.
One of the questions about a community is, how does one get around? What are the available modes of transportation for any particular city? If you live in a big city like Tel Aviv, there are intercity buses and intracity buses, trains, light rails. The light rail system is being expanded as we speak across the country. In the next several years, there are going to be many more options for public transportation. But if you live out in the suburban, more less populated areas, you might be only have a bus 4 times a day to your particular yishub, to your particular community. So these are also important things to think about. What if you're not going to own a car, and not everybody wants or can own a car? How will you get from place to place? Taxis are an option in many places in Israel and may be more affordable than owning a car. It is something to investigate. Owning a car in Israel can be quite expensive, between the cost of purchasing that car and keeping it insured and keeping it licensed and registered. All of that can add up pretty quickly. Gas in Israel is not inexpensive, so please keep that in mind. Rental cars are also an option, and very popular option for a lot of people. There are companies that rent cars by the day. So let's say you don't actually need a car daily, but you do want to go visit some friends in the north every so often. You can rent a car by the day. That is an option. Unlike in many places in the world, Israel does not have senior-specific transportation. Please keep that in mind as well. That's why taxis can be very helpful, as well as the inner city transportation. Topography and climate, I'm going to kind of put those two together. By topography, we mean, what does the area specifically look like? Israel's a relatively small country, but it does have a large variety relative to the size of the country of different kinds of topography. There's areas that are more flat, there are areas that are more hilly, and then areas that are quite hilly. When you live in Haifa, for example, you can expect, as long as you're on top of the hill, to have to go up or down a hill every time you leave the house, and you might have multiple stairs to even get into your apartment. If this is, I hope for everyone that this is something that you can manage now, but you want to think about as you age, whether this is going to be something that you can continue to manage, and consider that as you move forward. Within cities, even, there can be a difference in topography. For example, in Jerusalem, there are many areas that are quite hilly, but there are parts of the sections of in the center of the city that are less hilly, that are much more flat. Something to think about. Does the building have an elevator? Does it have, if this is important to you, a Shabbat elevator? And are you willing to use that Shabbat elevator if it exists? Climate is also, we are a small country. It is warm just about everywhere, but there are places where it cools down more at night, even in the summer. And there are places where it even can snow occasionally. So we have quite a bit between desert and mountains. We have quite a bit of different climate. It can be windy, it can be humid, it can be dry. Are any of these things important to you? Please consider that when choosing your community. The temperature of a place will also impact, going back to our first slide, your budget. The heating and cooling of your home will be impacted by the kind of climate that you choose to live in.
I would just like to add that for those of you who are 75 and older, you will enjoy free public transportation throughout the country. There was a thought to reduce the age to 67. That is not something that has yet passed. But for those of you 75 and above, upon your Aliyah, you will get what's called a Ravkav. The Ravkav is our public transportation smart card. You will go to the Ravkav office with your ID card with your Tudat Zehut, and it will be encoded for free public transportation. As Sarah mentioned, and I just want to reiterate this very important point, Israel does not yet have any type of senior specific on again, off again type of public transportation that may go around a particular community or a particular city. If you are using a wheelchair, if you are using a walker, you may also on your pilot trip want to experience public transportation so that you can understand how challenging or not so challenging that may be for you if you choose not to get a car. Now, hopefully, Sarah, this is bringing up other planning questions for our listeners today. How does one get a driver's license? I'm 79 years old. How will I get my driver's license? How do I buy a car? A lot of questions that you will find the answers to on our website, or you can discuss with your Aliyah advisor.
I'm going to add, Miriam, that not only Ravkab is available, there are other applications on your smartphone that you can use to pay for public transportation, and you don't even have to go into the office these days. You can change your profile to a senior profile simply by doing it online through the application on many of these public transportation applications that are now available.
Excellent. Excellent.
Okay, so we've talked about a lot of things today. We've talked about budgets. We've talked about topography and climate and religious diversity. And all of these things are a part and parcel of what we want you to think about when you are choosing where you want to live in Israel. And as Miriam had said before, I know a lot of you are probably very busy with all of the bureaucratic piece, but this planning piece is incredibly important and maybe even a bit more important to make sure that your Aliyah is successful. Our job here at Nefesh B'Nefesh, certainly in the pre-Aliyah department, is to try to help you avoid as many surprises as possible. And this video is meant to help you think about the things that will move you to having fewer surprises. Your choice of community is a foundation for your successful Aliyah, but it doesn't have to be a final decision. You move to a community, you've done your research, and you move to a community that you believe will be an amazing fit for you and your family, and it turns out it wasn't what you expected. There is no reason to feel stuck. Miriam and her colleagues in the post-Aliyah department will help you think about options. You can do internal pilot trips like I spoke about earlier. And as much planning as you can do in advance is wonderful, but you don't have to feel that once you've made that decision, you are left with no other options.
And remember that Israel is a very dynamic country. That's why we listen to the news every hour. Things may change all the time. So I'd like to share a story that happened to a particular Ole who actually chose the apartment building where he was going to live because it was next door to the medical clinic of the Kupat Cholim that he chose. And he thought this was going to be great. It was going to be really very, very convenient. Except that by the time he made Aliyah, that particular clinic had closed. They moved to a different location. And he was very angry but not at anything or anyone in particular. It's just that things really do change. And that's, a little bit one of the things you're going to bring with you in your hand luggage, along with all your documentation. You're going to bring with you your sense of humor. You're going to bring with you your ability to be Zorem. Zorem means to go with the flow. Sometimes that's what's needed as a new immigrant. Not to go with the flow to be what I call a friar, to be a pushover, but to understand that, you know what? You thought it was going to be this way, and maybe you need to recalibrate and look at it in another way. I like to tell people that the heaviest piece of luggage that you will bring with you when you make Aliyah is yourself. And if you are not that person who can say, hi, be my friend, moving 6,000 miles away will not increase that ability. And going back and summarizing to some of the things we spoke about, is that soft landing? Where will it be easier for you to make those friends? Where will it be easier for you to feel at home? Maybe at home means where you can find Skippy peanut butter. Maybe at home means where the rabbi of that synagogue speaks English. You know that you want to move to a structure. We call that a house, but you want that house to become your home. And saying goodbye to your present home is hard. There was once an Ola who said that the hardest piece of leaving was deciding which of her little knickknacks that she had collected over 50 years was she going to leave behind and which was she going to take with her. And of course, we can't take everything with us. I had told my family when we moved almost 30 years ago, I'm not bringing your report cards from third grade with us. And so saying goodbye means also saying goodbye to things, recalling wonderful, hopefully wonderful memories. But you want to be able to also bring with you what creates your home. Respect those feelings. Give yourself the time to say goodbye, whether it is really actually only to things or it's to your family, to friends. Create an Aliyah departure date that will allow you to have the time if you need to travel or if people are going to travel to you. Think about as you create community here in Israel and where you are going upon your arrival. Where will you be sleeping that night? What will you be sleeping on? Some people will decide to send their lift 6 weeks before so that they can arrive at the same time as their lift. And some people will say, I'm just going to buy everything new when I get here and sleep in their own bed wherever they are living abroad until their last night in their home, which may have only become a house because they sent everything else abroad in their lift. Saying goodbye is hard. It isn't easy. As much as you want to make Aliyah. And again, I encourage you to give yourself that time to breathe and that time to be able to have that closure that you want to have before you say hello. And before you say, okay, world, here I am, next chapter of my life. I've been wanting this for a moment. I've been wanting this for the past 40 years. I thought this is what I was going to do after college, and life got in the way. And now I'm nearing retirement. I'm retired. Whoever I am, I'm still going to be working. Whoever it is that you are, but now you're saying hello to a whole new potential, a potential for experiences that you never had before, a potential to meet people that you never knew before. And it is, having been in Olam myself, Sarah, I think, can say the same. I actually remember when Sarah made Aliyah. And yes, as I said earlier, Aliyah is exciting. If you've ever seen the videos, it's very exciting. And immigration is harder. Immigration takes work because the heaviest piece of luggage that you will bring with you is indeed yourself. Bring that flexibility, bring that sense of humor, bring that creativity, and bring your personal resilience. You're right, it's frustrating when the bank is closed when you thought you were going to go at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. You're right, it's frustrating that there's a shortage of whatever you wanted in the supermarket. That's true. But to be able to live in our homeland, in our country, is the greatest gift that you will ever give yourself. I look forward to welcoming you home whenever that will be, and I'm happy to receive your emails at any time.
Saying here, I am So glad that you took the time to listen to our presentation today. Please reach out with any questions or concerns that you might have. Our emails are on this slide. We'd love to hear from you.